In this episode, Free, Government Mule and Lowell George.
Welcome to a bonus episode of the first series of random album generator game. Now, while we're waiting for the new live and rare series to kick off a little bit later in the week, I discovered a couple of numbers that hadn't been used in the random album generator game, so I thought, let's do them and keep things ticking over while we're waiting for the new live and rare thing to be finished later in the week. So, what do we come up with? Well, we came up with a cracker. This. Free. Tons of Sobs, the very first Free album, recorded in October, 5 days in October of 1968, but not released until March of 69. I'll come on to the reasonings behind that later. Just look at this great cover. I mean, look at this. You open it up, the full sort of gatefold. You can see it's a rather odd, almost menacing type picture, really. Then on the inside, there's a nice old gatefold sleeve. And you've got a picture of the band all looking pretty much half asleep, to be honest. You've got to take into account as well that these chaps were only sort of like 17, 18, 19 years old at the time. To put together an album like this is something pretty spectacular. So what about the album then? Well, first of all, Tons of Sobs. Why is it called Tons of Sobs? Well, two reasons. Tons of Sobs, or two meanings to Tons of Sobs. One, it's a term for sort of Delta wailing, blues sort of singing, and it's also a Cockney slang term for having loads of money. You go out with tons of sobs in your pocket, you can have a good night. So, they're the two meanings of Tons of Sobs. I think it's a great title for an album. And as I said, it was recorded over 5 days in October 1968, but didn't come out until March 1969. Now, that was quite a long gap in those days from when an album was recorded to when an album was released. Now, the reasoning behind that was initially one of the tracks on this album was going to be called Visions of Hell, which was a track which I think was written by Andy Fraser and Paul Rodgers and was due to be on the album. Now, basically, this album is pretty much their live set at the time. Now, a part of that live set was a track called The Hunter, which everybody who's heard this album will know is on, but it wasn't initially going to be. It was going to be the track Visions of Hell instead, and The Hunter was sort of their big closing song at the end, and it was going down so well live they thought, we better not leave it off the album. So they took the decision to put The Hunter, which of course was a cover version, and take their own composition, Visions of Hell, off the album. To be honest, Visions of Hell is a great song, but it's similar to Moonshine in some ways. It resurfaced many years later when the CD remaster came out, and on the box set Songs of Yesterday. It's a great song, and it would have been worthy of its place on the album, but the decision was taken to put The Hunter on, and you've got to say, in retrospect, that was a good idea. Another interesting thing about this album, as we said, it's called Tons of Sobs, which is rhyming slang for loads of money. It didn't actually cost loads of money to make. 800 quid, they reckon it cost to make this in October 1968. So what's on it then? Well, it's an interesting album. It's got a couple of covers on it, and it's got some tracks that lasted right the way through to the end of Free's career. Now, for the first track on it, the opening track is called Over the Green Hills. Now, it's Over the Green Hills Part 1 that kicks off side A, and Over the Green Hills Part 2 closes side B. Now, initially, when that song was written, it was written as a complete song by Paul Rodgers on his own, before Free formed. But I think it was Guy Stevens who said, split it in half, put it at the beginning, bit at the end. Might sound like a bit of a wacky idea, but it worked, didn't it? And it was a great sort of start into the album with that sort of acoustic, dreamy sort of sound, and you're thinking, oh, what are we going to get next? What you got next was two belting rock tracks, really. Worry and Walk in My Shadow could well be as heavy as Free ever really got. They were real proper sort of blues-based rock tracks, which again, Paul Rodgers had got prepared before Free even had their first practice session. The other tracks on side one, Wild Indian Woman, probably one of the weaker cuts on the album, but it's still nice, bobbing along sort of song. And the final track on side one is a blues cover, Going Down Slow, and it's quite clearly the purest blues track that Free ever recorded. You can see it gave the influence for tracks like Mr. Big and Heavy Load and stuff that Be My Friend even probably, that came a little bit later on, but it's a real proper blues barnstormer, and it's worth a price of admission alone just for that, really. But I could say that about every track on the album if I wanted to, couldn't I? So flip over to side two in the old vinyl days, and what do you kick off with there? Well, you kick off with one of my favourite Free tracks, and it must have been one of theirs as well. I'm a Mover. Now, I'm a Mover was the first song that Andy Fraser and Paul Rodgers wrote together, and they wrote it at their very first practice rehearsal session. How incredible was that? I've momentarily forgotten the name of the place. I think it was I'll put a thing up on the bottom because I'm just getting my nags' heads and my batches and all sorts of things mixed up. But it was and a fickle pickle and all sorts of things like that, which is all a part of it. Anyway, the first practice session rehearsal, they wrote that track, and it stayed in the Free set right until the end when Rabbit was in there and Tetsuya Muchi and Andy Fraser and Kossoff weren't playing with the band anymore. So it was obviously a bit of a favourite for everybody, that one, and it's a bit of a favourite for me as well, as those of you who know me will know, and also those of you who've been watching previous episodes of this will remember me talking about it a few episodes ago when it was covered by an Australian band called Buffalo, who stretched it out for about 2 hours or a fortnight or something like that. Anyway, after that we get The Hunter, which obviously was recorded a little bit later than the rest of the tracks. You can't really tell, it sounds as though it was recorded at the same time. To me, they recorded it obviously in exactly the same way as they played it live. There's very, very little difference between that and the live stuff. And to be fair, this album is pretty much what their live set was at the back end of 68, early 69 anyway. Then we get Moonshine, which is a really sort of dark and menacing type track in many ways. Lyrically, it's almost makes you think more of Black Sabbath than Free, but it's great. And there's a few really good live versions of that kicking around as well on expanded editions and box sets and things. So that's another one that's just a little bit different to your normal Free track. Then we get Sweet Tooth, which is the last proper track on the album, and that's one that's definitely got Steve Miller playing the piano. And the interesting thing about this track is that you can tell Paul Rodgers has got either the beginnings of a cold or the end of a cold, depending on whether it was recorded on the 1st or the 5th of the date, I presume. He's just got a little bit of sort of nasal where you can get a bit of a cold in the vocal, but it doesn't stop it still being absolutely brilliant, and that is a great track. And then you go into the second part of Over the Green Hills, which finishes the album off. Now, what a start. I mean, you're talking about 4 people here. Paul Rodgers, Andy Fraser, Paul Kossoff and Simon Kirk. I don't think any of them were 20 yet. And this album is just so bluesy. It's the bluesiest Free album by a long way. In some places it could be even heavier. Things like Warrior Walking My Shadow. They are pretty stomping sort of blues-based rock songs. It's a brilliant album. If you get it now on CD, you don't quite get the nice fold-out gatefold sleeve, but you do get a bunch of extra tracks and different versions. It's well worth getting hold of for that. It's a great start for a band who everybody knows are my second favourite band, just marginally behind a certain band called Deep Purple, but these are pretty much close to it, and it's an album that I listen to quite a lot, so I'm glad it came out today. Another interesting thing about this is it gives me a chance to do something that I always forget to do, because people keep telling me I've got to ask people to subscribe and to like and to do all that sort of stuff. self-promotion. I'm rubbish at self-promotion, but today I'm going to do a bit of double self-promotion, because not only am I going to ask you to like and subscribe like I've just done, I'm also going to show you this. Now, this is a book. This is a book. There you go. It's called Rock and Roll Fantasy, and it's the musical journey of Free and Bad Company. And it's put together by This Day in Music Books, and it features contribution from me about that particular album. So if you want to hear what I think about it in a little bit more detail, let's have a copy of this great book, which has got a little snippet of me in there somewhere. I should have earmarked the page, shouldn't I? But I'm even in the index at the back, so that's pretty good. So there you go. That's the first album today. Tons of sobs. Free. The first album from one of the best bands ever. And a bonus of a book. Rock and Roll Fantasy. The story of Free and Bad Company.
The Man in the Attic.
Hello and welcome from The Man in the Attic. We are on a Friday morning here in southwest London in the wonderful world of Battersea, and it's raining outside, so I've ensconced myself in the attic for a little while to sort a few things out and to do this review for Crushed Custard. And I'm looking at a CD today, which is a bit of a departure. I've normally been looking at vinyl up until now, and I dipped into a box of CDs, just picked one out at random, and the one that came out was this one. It is Government Mule, and the album is called High and Mighty. Now, those of you who might not be familiar with Government Mule, it is based around mainly the talents of Warren Haynes on guitar and vocals, who has played with the Allman Brothers and does solo stuff as well. And Government Mule started off as a three-piece with him and a bass player called Alan Woody and a drummer called Matt Abts. Now, Alan Woody, I'm afraid, is one of those tragic people who had a terrible drug problem and succumbed to that some years ago. And the band is still going these days, Government Mule. This album was from 2006. Matt Abts is still on the drums, and they are now a four-piece band incorporating a bass and keyboard player as well. And what can I say about Government Mule? They're just great. They're one of those acts that they call a jam band. If you get any of their live stuff off of the internet on those download sites. Now, I'm not recommending this, of course, but if you do, you get virtually a different show every time. It's a bit of change from the more classic rock acts like the Stones or Deep Purple or whatever, where basically you're getting the same set again and again and again. The Government Mule can change their set from night to night, and they do some amazing cover versions as well. They really do incorporate so much into their musical palette. They are, on this particular album, which has got a terrific kind of classic rock sound, you can hear elements of people like Humble Pie, Cream, John Mayall, but lots of blues. The Allman Brothers, of course. Warren Haynes has got a terrific voice. He's a terrific guitar player, and I've seen some live stuff where he was with the Allmans and Eric Clapton comes up to play with them. Now, for me, Warren Haynes knocks Eric Clapton off stage on these things. But anyway, back to this album. As I said, 2006. It's got 12 tracks, and yeah, none of them will disappoint you. There are no sort of like racing tracks, like nothing like Highway Star or anything like that. There's quite a lot of sort of medium pace rockers, but very Humble Pie-esque in some parts. I found those. There are some great ballads, some great blues tunes. But it's all terrifically well produced. Beautiful production by the band themselves and a guy called Gordy Johnson. And yeah, what can I say? I would highly recommend it. If you've never listened to Government Mule, really you could get any of their albums, get any of their official live albums. Oh, and you must always only buy official, of course. Try those, and you get a flavour of how they are. They've even done a sort of semi-reggae version of Dark Side of the Moon called Dub Side of the Moon. Terrific stuff. And as I said, they can incorporate so much, and yeah, they'll have guests on stage and all sorts of things. Just a great band, and the sound they produce. This has just got elements of all the bands you like. You'll hear Free in there as well, people like that. Yeah, so give it a try. I mean, it kicks off with a great track called Mr. High and Mighty, and I might ask Martin if he can, in the links down below here, if he can put in a link to High and Mighty, or even a link to the full album, so you can have a listen. I might even share something on our Facebook group, a link to one of these tracks. But yeah, if you haven't tried them out before, they're still going. They still tour. They come to Europe now and again, and they'll be playing fairly small venues, like Shepherd's Bush Empire, or they even played the club Under the Bridge, which is a music bar at Stamford Bridge. Yes, I don't apologise for being a Chelsea fan. I was born and brought up around here. They're my local team, so I'm not a glory hunter. Anyway, yes, no disappointing tracks on this. Beautifully produced, great sound, great vocals, great guitar, great bass, great keyboards, terrific drums. The drums sound just as I like it. And yeah, go for it. Check it out. Or check out any of their albums. As I say, this one's from 2006. There are many that you could get. And if you ever get the chance to see them live, I haven't. I've seen them on video, DVD, and great. So, yeah, if they're a new band to you, as they were to me some years back, I'd never heard of them before. A good friend of mine in France, Lillian Pothron, if you're viewing this, Lillian, hello, kind of pointed me in their direction. So, what are this band like? He said, they're really good. They're a bit like Cream and so. So one of my favourite bands. So check them out. And I thought, yeah, they are very, very, very good. So yeah, Government Mule, High and Mighty. Check it out. You will enjoy it. Another guarantee from the man in the attic.
Right, next up then, from 1979, this one, Lowell George from Little Feat. Thanks, I'll Eat It Here. Now, what a jolly good album this is as well. Now, by the late 70s, Lowell George was getting a little bit cheesed off with one or two of the members of Little Feat, and thought the band was sort of going a little bit too jazzy or whatever, and wanted to get back to what he liked doing best. So he virtually disbanded Little Feat while they were recording the Down on the Farm album, and started to concentrate a little bit more on this solo album, which he'd been dipping in and out of for 2 or 3 years after signing a solo deal. It's got some great people on this. There's all sorts of people on it. Chili Charles is on it, Bonnie Raitt's on it, all sorts of people on it. It's a short album. It's only lasts for about 30 minutes. And I would say a couple of the tracks are a little bit not that brilliant. But the rest of them, goodness me, absolute crackers of tracks. The other thing that's interesting about this album is that for a solo album, quite a lot of the material isn't actually written by Lowell George, which is a little bit surprising. Most solo albums tend to be written by the person who makes a solo album in the first place, as opposed to being in a band. But I think the point with this one is he just wanted to make an album that he enjoyed playing on. The first track is an Alan Toussaint track. Now again, as I've said earlier in today's episode, people that have watched previous episodes of this random album generator game will have heard the name Alan Toussaint come up a couple of times with regard to Frankie Miller and Jess Roden. So he's what a big, well-known sort of songwriter, and of course did lots of other stuff, loads of great stuff on his own, and producing and all that sort of stuff, and did some stuff with Elvis Costello later on as well. The track that kicks off this album is What Do You Want the Girl to Do, which is, I think, it's absolutely brilliant. The version on here is quite similar to Toussaint's original version, which was on, I think it was on his Summer Nights, I think it was called, the album that he was on, that it was originally on. Brilliant song. One of my great favourites. I don't know why it's never been a massive hit for anybody. If it has, and I've missed out on it, let me know. Somebody tell me, because I just think it's a great song. I've got a cracking version of it by Bonnie Raitt as well on one of her albums. Can't remember what the album's called, but I know she's dressed up as a baseball player on the front of it. I can't think what it's called off the top of my head. But that kicks the album off, and that is absolutely brilliant. The second track, Honest Man, is another cracker of a song, and it's, for me, it's between this and that. These first two are, I think, the best two on it. It's that's not to say the rest of them aren't any good, but these two are a cracking start. Again, it's got that it's got the horns and the backing vocals and the Muscle Shoals feel and all that sort of stuff. It's really, really good stuff. And then we move on to the third track. Now, the third track, Two Trains. Now, this is where it just starts to, we go off into almost sort of like southern rock territory with this one a little bit. Now, if you can imagine Lynyrd Skynyrd with female backing vocals and a horn section, that's what that sounds like, Two Trains. It's a cracker. It's a brilliant track, and it's worth the price of admission, as they say, and it's not that far beyond the first two as well. So it's a great opening 1, 2, 3 there. And then, just to make things even more interesting, the final track on side 1 is a cover of the Ann Peebles track, I Can't Stand the Rain. There, Lowell George's voice is not an Ann Peebles type voice at all, but he rearranges it and makes it work. It really is good. It's a nice version. Tons of versions of that track around, of course, but it works. You wouldn't think it would, but it does. Just to nip back to the track before, Two Trains, that I should have pointed out as well, that was a reworking of a Dixie, of a Little Feat album, a Little Feat track. I think it was on Dixie Chicks album, was it? Can't remember again off the top of my head, but I think it was. Anyway, that's side 1 of Lowell George. Thanks, I'll leave it here. Let's move on to side 2, which for me doesn't kick off quite as well as side 1 finished, or even started for that matter. Cheek to Cheek is the track I'm talking about. It's the weakest track on the album, mate, although I do know a lot of people who are fans of Lowell George who will probably be sticking pins in a little doll of me now because they think it's great. To me, it's just it's a little bit too Spanish, Mexican, gypsy music for me, and it's not that there's anything wrong with Spanish, Mexican, gypsy music, but it just doesn't sit on. It doesn't sit right in this. It doesn't. You put it on and you think, oh crikey, they mispressed a different album on the second side. Next, we get the sleazy, sort of bluesy stomp of Easy Money. Now this was written by Ricky Lee Jones. Great track, really, really, really good sleazy sort of stomping blues track, which is really, really good. Then we go on to 20 Million Things, which is, describe it really, it's just one of those songs that's got that sort of beautiful feel about it. It just really does feel nice without being anything particularly elaborate. It's a fairly simple, straightforward sort of song, but it is a really pleasant listen, as is the next track, Find a River. It's, I'd say the second side of the album is definitely slightly inferior to the first side, but it's still nice. Apart from that opening Cheek to Cheek track, I think that those next three, Easy Money, 20 Million Things and Find a River, are pretty good songs. The final track on the album is a little bit weird. It's called Himmler's Ring, and it was written by Jimmy Webb. And it's almost like a vaudeville type comedy song. It's really strange, and it's got its merits. It's not unlistenable. It's an odd end to the album for me, and that's what makes this album a little bit puzzling, because to me it's got 9 tracks on it, 7 of which are absolutely wonderful. 2 don't really fit for me, and the thing that makes that a little bit stranger is that there were 2 other tracks recorded at the same sort of time, which came out at a later date, one on the expanded version of this, and one on a Little Feat compilation, which could have been on there instead. So I'm not quite sure what the thinking about that was. Those 2 songs incidentally were called Heartache and China White. Heartache being the one that came out on the CD remaster of this. So I hope you're taking from what I'm saying that this is a really, really good album. It stands there in amongst some of my sort of favourite and most listened to albums. It's one of those albums that's got a feel to it that no other album has got, because it sort of stands by itself. Because sadly, after this, Lowell George was only sort of 34. He died, I think, about 11 days, I think, after he'd given an interview saying that he was going to take back control of Little Feat and turn them back into the band that they were supposed to be in the first place. So this was the last sort of thing that came out while he was alive, on the album that they were working on, that Little Feat were working on when he died. The rest of them did finish it off, and it did get released. But so this is very much a one-off album, and you can pick it up without spending a fortune as well. So it's well worth getting hold of. Another thing you've got to say about this is the cover. Now the cover, you look at it and you go, Lowell George in a bathrobe. What's that all about? Well, look in the background. If I can get this close enough so you can see it. If you're watching this on bigger. This is a painting. It's a copy of a painting by Edouard Manet, which is, what's it called? It's called Le Déjeuner sur something or other. Let's try that bit again. Le Déjeuner sur la herbe or something. And the 3 people who are sitting there at the dinner are not the 3 people who are in Edouard Manet's original painting, obviously, because if you look, you've got Fidel Castro, Bob Dylan, and Marlene Dietrich in the background of the cover, or Lowell George's Thanks, I'll Eat It Here from 1979. A cracking album. If you've not heard it, try and get a listen to it, because it really is good, and you won't regret it, as they say.
We hope you enjoyed this episode and hope to see you again soon. Please like and subscribe.